tired because I don't want to see if we can just let it on board and look on the driver's a little bit further back here tonight because once he dumps out a little bit of an indication that Tony should have hired more people over. This is a race that number 6 come out, he will be quite a bit of Jared Haggard. And
so now every one of these drivers has gone off their road and we have
It's gonna be a blast, and my gosh, can we not wait for that one.
Michigan International, where the Sim Racers Club is getting ready to roll off the pit road for 10 minutes of qualifying for the Farm to House Decor 200. I'm Andre Grandbush, Chief Meteorologist, and shortly I'll be joined alongside Jordan Harnish, who is currently running a race of his own, but he'll be here sooner or later. And of course, as always, producer Carlos Acosta, the man who makes it happen. The weather conditions are up on your screen, as you can see. 74 degrees today of humidity, a little bit cloudy, maybe some grip in those tires, all of that good information. But some of these drivers already starting to roll off for qualifying. This is going to be one crazy event tonight. We do have the 550 horsepower package, so going to be a lot of drafting, possibly even some bump drafting. And we've already got some people in the chat. Todd Kirkwood says, Olaf from the number 40 Desert Hobbies Camry. Todd's going to be in this event. Good luck to you, Todd. Glad to have you in the chat. Glad to have everybody in the chat who is waiting for this event to start as we ride on board with Mahan, the driver of the number 84, setting out to post his time. It's always interesting. Qualifying is very different at this track from the actual racing experience. Of course, going out on your own, you don't have draft, you don't have the aero, creating that turbulence on your car and making it handle differently. It's almost like you're driving at a different track entirely with a lot slower lap times and a lot easier to handle the car. But right now, no driver has completed anything besides their out lap, so we're still waiting for some times to be posted to the board. Of course, Will Worsler was in the chat earlier. He said, I'm not feeling this race, you guys. So maybe a not very confident number 29 machine, but I know Will Worsler, and even the races he's not confident, he seems to do pretty well. So we'll keep an eye on his qualifying time and see what he can do tonight here at Michigan. But looks like we do have some times being posted to the board. John Eckert is going to be the first one to the top, immediately dethroned by Greg Evans in the number 2. And Greg Evans, in turn, was also thrown off of that hill by Thomas George, who has now been passed by Pete Baskins. And looks like Pete is going to stay on the top of the board for the first lap, at least, with a 38.879. But it looks like our commentator, Jordan Harnish, is finally ready to join us. He's finished with his racing event. Jordan, what are you looking forward to tonight here at Michigan?
High speeds, wide open, almost like a Daytona. It's just not the Daytona. So that's what I'm looking forward tonight. Tight packs, going to be a good race to watch. Looking for maybe even an upset winner, just with the package we have tonight.
Absolutely. It really could be anybody's game. It's going to be so close between the pack. I mean, the front of the pack and the back of the pack are likely only going to be separated by a few seconds. So if anything happens, if there's any pileups, any wrecks, if you're just in the right position, you could definitely see a surprise winner tonight. But it's going to be fun to watch for sure. A lot of strategy as well. We've heard a little bit about the fuel mileage from the league admins, and they said that if all of the conditions fell absolutely right, and the track temp was just right, and there was enough drafting going on, there was a slight minuscule chance that some of these guys could go 50 laps on a tank of gas, which would be the halfway mark. So theoretically, not very likely, but on paper, it could be a one-stop race. I'm not going to say that that's going to happen. I think the majority, if not all of these drivers, are going to take the two-stop. I mean, we've seen this a lot in this league, Jordan, where a one-stop is theoretically feasible, but it's actually faster to take two stops, get those fresh, good years, get the faster lap times, and you actually make that time back up that you would otherwise save by not pitting.
Yeah, it takes me back to the duels at Daytona that we had beginning of the season, set the qualifying for the first race of the season, the duel that I was actually in. You saw that pretty much everybody wanted to try to do it on a no-stop strategy. Very early on, me and one other driver decided that it was that was not going to be the decision we were going to make. Went all out, see what we could do, and ended up finishing 1-2, passing them all down, going down the backstretch on the last lap. So different strategies, like you said, can play out, but like you said, the tires and fuels tend to be the fastest way to go.
Absolutely. And just an update on qualifying time. Tyler Seville in that number 11 machine. He was your pick last week there, Jordan. He's on the top of the board right now with a 38.824, just barely edging out Will Worsler, who jumped to second on the board. He said he wasn't feeling this race, but there he is outside row 1 as they stand. And it looks like the majority of drivers have turned their first and second laps. The only drivers yet to post anything to the board are going to be Jeff Ward in that number 9 and Brian Yazik in the 55. I would assume Yazik is going to qualify. He's not usually one to sit out. And he is on track, so he's going to post a time. But as it stands, it seems like the worst that Will Worsler could fall would be back to fourth if both drivers posted a time faster than his. But I don't foresee that happening. So a great qualifying effort out of that 29. Scott Eckridge is going to be starting, it looks like, on the inside of row 3. So good time by there. And man, these lap times from first all the way back to ninth are separated by less than a tenth. Actually, 7/100ths of a second is what separates first from ninth. And then going further back, the gaps only get closer. So, man, these drivers, they've all got the same setup, they've got the same car, and it seems like they all have a very similar level of experience at this track, and they seem to have figured it out.
Absolutely. Looking through the leaderboard as we speak right now. One name I saw pop up there that really kind of surprised me, but in a way didn't. It's his home track. Pete Baskins currently sitting, I believe, P4. We see Brian Yazek still on track here going through turns number 1 and 2. Pete's having a little bit rough of a season, but good to see him currently sitting in the top 5.
Absolutely. It was a great effort by Pete Baskins and Michael Larch as well up there in the top 5. He's a pretty good driver, maybe not always up there in qualifying, but in the race he finds his way towards the front. But so that's a good qualifying effort out of the driver of the number 3, Drew Carroll, who's got a few wins under his belt and a podium last week. He is sitting currently P6, only a few hundredths behind the leader. So quite the interesting running order, a little bit of a shakeup. And like you said there, Jordan, some drivers that qualified pretty well that maybe we see more as racers rather than hot lappers.
Absolutely, and like I said, a Daytona that's not a Daytona. It's good to see some different faces sitting up front that might not have a chance at a track, say like Daytona. New Hampshire or a shorter track like a mile and a half. Coming here to Michigan, being able to run it a little bit more wide open, you have a little bit more room to play with, and it shows that they have some speed as well.
Absolutely. Now, I'm looking at my timing and scoring, and even though Brian Yazek was on track, he was turning laps, he still has not posted a time to the board, so I'm not sure if he got an incident point, and perhaps that disallowed his time, or if that was an intentional move somehow to start in the back. I mean, that is a strategy you got to think about. Starting in the back could be ideal at a track like this. You mentioned it's Daytona, but it's not Daytona. And what do you see so often when we go to Daytona, Talladega, these bigger tracks? Some drivers, they like to hang back. They like to start in the back. They like to stay in the back. And then when everything goes wrong in front of them, they got plenty of time to react, plenty of space to maneuver. And then at the end of it, they try to find their way up front. So maybe that's what Brian was doing, just trying to get the extra practice laps while not necessarily posting a time that could put him in the middle of the pack or up front where he would be right in the fray of things if anything went awry.
I just got to think back to last week. I know Brian was having a really good run at Watkins again last week and had a little bit of a connection issue. I wonder if that's still playing a part of it. I do know connection issues, if you're in and out too many times in your qualifying lap, it won't allow it. So maybe that was a lingering issue we're going to keep an eye on as well.
That is a good point. And to add on to that, we have some other drivers who are potentially a little bit nervous about their internet connection. Troy Haight was actually disconnected due to incoming packet loss earlier in the practice session. He had to rejoin, and so he came back in. He qualified, it looks like, P13 as they stand. But anytime you get disconnected from a session once, that kind of it unsettles you. You got that in the back of your mind. You're thinking, man, that could happen again at any point, and makes it a little bit hard to focus sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely does. The last thing you want is to having a really good run, like, again, Brian Yazek last week running top 5 and coming down to the end of the race, and all of a sudden you're looking at a blank screen because internet went out or power went out or something like that. It's just a really gut-wrenching feeling when you know there's nothing you can do about it and you just lost a race for seemingly no reason.
For sure. And right now on your screen, the number 37, that's Corey Benton. He's getting himself some practice laps. We talked about it last week at Watkins Glen. Sometimes these guys will stay out on the track after they've posted their 2 mandatory laps, and they'll just ride it out until the race session begins. That way they get a little bit extra practice, a little bit more seat time. And Michigan is a track that, even though it's kind of wide open and it will be sort of a mini Daytona, there's still an element just show up.
Absolutely, and more prepared you are, the hopefully better chance you're going to have to finish the race up front, or even just finish the race. Like you said, the track changes quite a bit here at Michigan. Looking forward to seeing multiple grooves come alive as the race continues, and that's what it looks like Corey Benton right now is trying to figure out, is which groove is going to be the best one to start out the race in. Conditions you see right now will be what they start the race with, and hopefully as the race goes on, the top widens out and we start to see 3, 4, maybe even 5 wide.
I could definitely see that happening, and the qualifying has officially concluded. So, with that, we can go ahead and run through the grid with our official qualifying results as these drivers are preparing to roll off. I'll go ahead and take 1 through 10. I'll hand the rest off to you there, Jordan. On the pole, number 11 for Will Wurzler Racing, Tyler Seville with a 38.824. Will Wurzler, the boss man, right alongside him there in the number 29, 38.842. So, man, just 0.02 of a second between the boss man and Tyler Seville. Scott Eckert's going to be leading row 2 on the inside with a 38.865 alongside Pete Baskins, who you mentioned had a fantastic qualifying effort. He's going to be looking for a good run tonight. Michael Larch and Drew Carroll going to make up row 3 behind them. Row 4, Thomas George and Greg Evans back in 8th. A surprisingly, well, it's a good spot. I mean, 8th, you can't complain about an 8th. But Greg Evans is just so good that sometimes you see him back in 8th and it kind of shocks you a little bit. So he'll be rolling out a little bit further back than we're used to. But again, long race, he's got plenty of time to get up front, and I'm sure he will. Johnny Avila and AJ Digby are going to round out your top 10.
11th is the 40th, Todd Kirkwood. John Eckert in the 45 is going to start 12th. 13th goes to the 28 of Troy Haight, as you mentioned. Hopefully he's got his connection issues cleared up. Michael Krobach in 14th. Jackson Van Volkenberg will start 15th. Woody Mahan in 16th. Grant Brown in 17th. Adam Jersky with a somewhat surprising qualifying run for him being so far back. Alan Young in the number 24 qualifies 19th. And Kevin Stone rounds out the top 20.
And just outside the top 20, you've got Richard Fletcher in the number 43 there in 21st. He's going to be alongside Tim Knott in the 41 there in 22nd. Corey Benton, the hot lapper himself, trying to get those practice laps there in qualifying. He's going to be in the catbird seat here in 23rd. And Craig Stykes is going to be alongside him. Craig was the final driver to post a time. And then, final row, 2 drivers who did not post a time, Brian Yazik and Jeff Ward, respectively, 25th and 26th. And as we finish up our walk through the grid, our proverbial walk through the virtual grid, looks like the pace truck is pulling out, and these drivers are going to be going green pretty shortly here. And man, I don't know about you, Jordan, I'm getting pretty excited. These plate races, I mean, it's not really a plate race, but it's going to race like one. They're not always the most fun experience as a driver. Sometimes it can be frustrating, and I know a lot of these guys were kind of dreading tonight. I mean, we even heard it, going back to the interviews that we conducted after the race last week. We had the number 27 driver there, Drew Carroll, saying, man, if we have that 550 package, I'm not going to have much fun. Well, that's the package they have, but from a spectator's perspective, it's going to be a riot, man. These guys are going to be bumper to bumper, door to door all night long, and it's going to be a little bit like a lottery, man. You're not going to know who's walking away with this one.
Absolutely. What you're going to see is just that. I mean, I talked to a few drivers this week. Big runs are expected, bigger than what you see at the mile-and-a-half tracks, maybe even bigger than what you see at Daytona and Talladega just because of the drafting package that we have here tonight. They weren't afraid to say they were going to go 3-4 wide all race long, and they were even thinking the slingshot move from 5th on back is going to be insane.
Absolutely, because, I mean, at Daytona, we kind of have these measures, such as the tapered spacer, that sort of stall out the runs a little bit more than just the regular 550 package. So you get some big runs at those tracks. But here, we don't have that tapered spacer. We've just got the lower horsepower, and we've got the big old spoiler on there. And there is going to be some absolutely massive runs. You're absolutely right. And they could come from mid-pack. I mean, you might see some drivers, like you said, go from 5th to 1st with just one good and well-timed move. But there goes the pace truck down into pit road. It's going to be Will Wurzler Racing leading the field to green side by side. The number 29 gets a great jump on the outside. Now, he was not the control car, but he will nose out Tyler Seville as behind them. Looks like we're going to go 2 wide. Thomas George to the inside of the number 3. Almost looking to make a move on the number 11. He's got the momentum, but does he take the run?
George looking to the bottom, as like I said, 3 wide, lap 1 into turn 3. These guys not even afraid coming out of it. 4 wide out of turn number 4 as they fan back out. Trouble down the backstretch. Looks like the 15 of Grant Brown got shuffled out to the infield.
Oh, man, and he's going to rejoin the track. That's one of the nice things about Michigan here is that backstretch is pretty much all paved. There's really no grass. There's a nice big runoff. So if something happens like what we just saw with Grant Brown, you got plenty of time to recover. Now, there's a lot of bumps down there. It's not the smoothest surface that you're going to ever race on, but you can't complain about the apron as long as it's paved and you have time to recover like he did. But that can really save your race day, as it did. But man, the battle for the lead continuing as the number 11 is under fire from the number 39. That is going to be Pete Baskins trying to side draft Will Worsler there in the number 29. He's going to dive it down low on the bottom. Now, obviously, at a normal intermediate track, I would say the bottom is generally where you want to be, Jordan. But at this track, with how wide it is, with how big it is, and with how much drafting is going on, where would you want to be as a driver? Would you want to be down low, or would you want to take that top line?
Me personally, I'm taking the top all day long, keeping the engine wound up, keeping the RPMs wound up, keeping that momentum wound up. Pinning it on the bottom just didn't ever do it for me here, as we see Pete Baskins still hanging on side by side with the 11 and even starting to inch forward coming through the corner, making me a little bit of a liar. It's good to see Pete running on the bottom and holding his own. He's getting some help from, well, he was getting some help from the two of Greg Evans, as now they go 3 wide down in turn number 3.
And that was a hellacious run from the number 2. That's going to put him clear up into the lead. He did what the 39 was struggling to do. He got that slingshot maneuver, went 3 wide down to the bottom, and was able to claim the lead for himself, shuffling the 11 back into 3rd. But Greg Evans, man, you got to think he is just on cloud 9 right now. He's kind of had, for anybody else, I'd say he's had a series of good performances, but, going by the standards of Greg Evans, the defending series champion, in his own words, he's had some unfortunate luck this season. He's not been running the way he wants to run. So to be able to slingshot up to the front and know that you've got the car underneath you, that's got to take a load off the old shoulders, and that's got to make you feel pretty confident going into the rest of the night.
Definitely a sigh of relief came from the helmet of the 2 cars as he made that move and he realized, here we go, my mojo's back. But even attesting to that, we have some big names in this league that have really stepped up even since the beginning of the season. Scott Eckridge, really fighting Greg Evans for the win title this year. Tyler Seville, I know he's clicked off a few wins this year. And then later on in the season, Johnny Avilia came in. He started clicking off some good finishes and even a couple wins. And then Drew Carroll, who entered really late in the season, he's even clicked off a few wins since he's been here. So I dare say the talent this year might not be greater, but the competition is much stiffer.
Absolutely. The more drivers you get that are just as capable as one another, the fiercer the competition gets. And as we were talking about Evans, the 39 actually finally completed that move that he was trying to make earlier. This time he completed it on Greg Evans. And he got out to the lead, and surprisingly, that number 39 is getting out to a decent gap. I mean, he's got about 4 car lengths over second place, which is something that we had not seen up until this point. All 5 laps prior to him taking the lead, we've seen battling for the lead, and nobody really broke away. Do you think getting out to the lead is going to be a bit of a disadvantage for a driver like Pete Baskins? I mean, at Daytona and Talladega, they always say you don't want to get too far out because then you're just opening the door for the drivers behind you to use that draft and get a huge run. Does that apply here?
I don't think it does. I think Pete's got it right where he wants it. This is, like I said, it's a home track for Pete, so he really put the time in to try to run good here tonight. I know he put more practice laps than I've seen Pete put in a long time. And as you see the top 3 start to break away, I think Pete's right where he wants to be and right where he needs to be.
Absolutely. I mean, if he can get out of the drafting range and kind of leave these guys behind, that'll be a huge load off. And you got to think, too, he's got the advantage of clean air. That's something we haven't really talked about tonight. As the caution flies, we got an incident further back in the field. Cars slamming into the inside wall. That's the number 15. And Scott Eckridge, it seems, is flipping end over end on the inside wall. Wow, some power players involved in this huge backstretch pileup.
See the 55, Brian Yazik, 15, Grant Brown, the 40, Todd Kirkwood. I believe the 41 of Tim Knott, all involved. I know there's more than that. Those are the ones that I caught as they all started crashing down the backstretch, as the replay comes up on your screen right now. Looks like mid-pack, right where you don't want to be at Daytona, and that's kind of the situation we kind of run into here. 45 got hooked down the backstretch, 55 got hooked after the 45, and melee ensued from there. And as you said, the 70 of Scott Eckridge hard into the backstretch wall.
Yeah, I don't think any driver took a hit quite as hard as Scott Eckridge. I mean, his car came entirely up off the ground, spinning around like a Beyblade before he was ultimately able to come to a rest and get a tow back to the pit lane. The number 15 got rolling, although he seems to be heavily wounded. We're going to take another look here. They were 3 wide, looks like Thomas George in the middle. Just got a little unsettled out of the corner, hooked the 45 like you said, and from there it was just an absolute brawl. And man, the big one has struck early here at Michigan.
That it has unfortunately taken out some of the top contenders. Like I said, Scott Eckridge involved in that. Looks like he is taking that car behind the wall. I know the 9 was involved, the 55, Brian Yazik. Some big competitors. You see the 69, Adam Dursky. Looks like he's missing the nose of that car. a lot of drivers in the top 10 in points, and even a couple that have run very well since they've come back have some serious damage from this wreck.
Yeah, they're going to be really struggling, and this is not a track where you want to be down on engine power. This is a track where you're going to be pretty much flat out the entire time, and that means you're almost consistently going to be losing time if you don't have the maximum revs in that engine for a lot of these drivers. And Nikki Worsler in the chat asked, what happened to the number 70? Did he not start third? I believe he did. He did start towards the front. But it's very easy to get shuffled back at a track like Michigan. I mean, you know as well as I do, Jordan, with how much drafting is going on, if you're not in that draft, it's like a parachute gets deployed out of the deck lid of your car, and you lose 15, 20 miles an hour. And it really only takes a lap and a half or so before you can find yourself going from the front to the back. And if everybody's in a train and there's no room to slot up in that draft, you really have no choice but to fall back.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to make a move too early. It's going to result in an unfortunate wreck like this. You don't want to be the trigger of it. And it didn't look like that was a wreck of impatience. It looked like it was a wreck of just someone got loosed off the corner, being 3 wide, and there was really no place to go. But like I said, you don't want to be the person that causes a multi-car wreck on lap 5 of a 100-lap race.
No, that's one that'll definitely damage the old pride. I've been there. I've been the guy that makes just that little mistake that kind of dominoes into something way bigger. And man, not a good feeling, and probably kind of upsetting some of the drivers that were involved. But I mean, you can't really blame him, Jordan. Getting out of this corner 3 wide is such a difficult thing to do. I mean, when you have cars on either side of you and a car in front of you, the air that is flowing over your car is so disrupted, so warped from what it normally is. The car is going to handle completely different than it would anywhere else. So coming out of that corner, it does not surprise me that he lacked the downforce that he needed to be able to get on the throttle and just kind of run his line there. It got a little squirrely, and he saved it. He gathered it up, but unfortunately, there were cars so close on either side that there just was not that room for error. But the question is going to be, I suppose now, as the lights are off on the pace car, I don't believe anybody pitted, correct, Jordan?
No one came down pit road other than the cars that crashed.
Okay, so the question is going to be, how much importance are these drivers putting on tires? Are they pitting are they not pitting because they want to save the tires, or are they not pitting because, well, we only made about 8 laps and tires don't matter too much here?
If I'm them, I'm saving the tires as long as I can. I want to have as many sets as possible towards the end of the race. I think they're also maybe thinking fuel mileage here. I mean, at this point with the caution, if you get one more quick caution, that 50 lap mark becomes a lot easier to hit. Maybe even stretch it a little bit further to make sure you have enough on the opposite end.
Absolutely. And you know, it does sound crazy as well, but these cars do get heavier with more fuel, and the simulation does take that into account with the handling and the top speed. So perhaps a lot of these drivers not wanting to weigh themselves down with that extra splash of fuel and go to the back just to do it, you know, so that's something they could be thinking about. But it's going to be the number 39, Pete Baskins, leading them to the stripe, getting a good early jump there, leaving the 72 in the dust there. He's going to cross the line with a decent advantage. And it was the number 84, Woody Mahan, who I would say was a pretty big benefactor out of that whole brawl. If anybody benefited from it, it was Mahan. He was able to, I think, pick up a few positions from that, and now restarting where he did, he's able to run up inside the podium, getting a huge run now to the outside of that number 39. Pete Baskins not going to be secure in the lead for long as the 84 does take the point. And he's got some draft help from that number 2. Now that 39 might be in danger, Jordan. We talked about how you have to be able to stay in the draft if the cars are all in a line to your outside and you can't catch their draft. You might fall back. That's the risk that 39 is facing right now.
First to about 5th in 1 lap, that's the risk you take. No one wanted to go with poor Pete. And you said benefactor out of that last wreck was the 84, Woody Mahan. Poor Woody has been involved in anything that wasn't his fault this season. So it's good to see him make it through that wreck and out front right now.
Yeah, he had an unfortunate incident there last week at Watkins Glen, I believe. So he just kind of continued his unlucky streak. But tonight, not to jinx him, but he seems to be having a little bit better luck than what we've seen out of the last few weeks, and definitely has a good run going for sure. So we're going to see if he can capitalize on that. The number 11 is another car that kind of got shuffled back. He's back in what I believe to be 6th or 7th place right now, being pushed by Johnny Avila, who I'm a little surprised Johnny hasn't made much more noise tonight here, Jordan. I mean, he's definitely, I would say, a driver that you expect to see up front and qualifying really well. He's kind of a good all-arounder. Doesn't really matter where you go, but right now he's just kind of sitting there in about, I would say, 8th, 9th place, just inside the top 10, kind of lurking, which in my opinion, kind of a scary place to be in mid-pack. I mean, that's where a lot of those guys were when that wreck happened that took them out. So what do you think the strategy play is for Johnny Avila? Do you think he's going to try to use the draft and kind of work his way through the field, or is he just going to ride where he is and just wait to see what happens?
I honestly couldn't tell you what Johnny's thought process is right now. Thinking back to that wreck and how many people who were involved and who was involved, it kind of got you thinking for a minute. You don't want to be in the back, because a lot of those guys that were involved, like Scott Eckridge, is safely in the chase coming up here in a few weeks. But there was a few cars I noticed that wrecked in that wreck that were not safe. They're right on the bubble. The 15 Grant Brown, the 45 of John Eckert, all right there on the bubble, that you don't want to have a bad race 2 or 3 races right before the chase starts. That could make or break your chase, and could be the reason why you're racing for 16th on the grid instead of a championship.
It absolutely could be. This is not the time in the season to be having a bad race and getting DNF'd, so definitely have to be aggressive yet cautious, which is, kind of counterintuitive. It's hard to do both those things at once, but sometimes as a driver, you just got to find that happy medium. You got to find that balance. And Johnny Avila, like I said, he's a good all-rounder. If anybody can find the balance, it's definitely him. So I'm curious to see where he goes as the race progresses, because it seems like he really is trying to move up the grid. As you were talking, Jordan, I was watching him. He was getting a nice push from the number 72 at one point, and he was really kind of bump drafting with some of these guys. He got to the inside, tried to make some moves happen, but every move he's made is just kind of stalled out. So I think he's trying to get up front. I'm not sure he's content where he is. As the number 2, Greg Evans is going to go way down towards the apron, see if he can make something happen there, and he does. He's going to get up to the lead, only to immediately have it taken back away by Will Worsler in that 29. So WWR going back to the front, at least for now. Greg Evans not letting him get away with it so easy. He is right on the bumper on corner exit. Yeah, I don't think, I talk about how the 63 isn't content with where he is, Jordan, but I'm not so sure any of these guys are content except for the leader.
No, absolutely not. Watching that battle go down the front stretch, and I kind of clenched there for a minute, because I saw the 2 of Greg Evans on the very bottom. I saw the 29 a little worse on the top, and it looked like they were almost going to meet in the middle. Luckily, there was a little bit of room between them, but like I said earlier, those big moves are going to start happening. You're going to see people come from the top to the bottom and just slingshot their way through the field.
Absolutely, and Will Worsler was able to kind of extend his lead there that last lap by about 3 car lengths, but now coming through the corner, it looks like Greg Evans is going to close that gap. Now, it is a little difficult to pass. We've seen a lot of passing for the lead, but you have to make sure that you've got the support. I mean, you really can't do it on your own, I don't think. If it's just you with the draft that you have from the car in front of you and you try to get down to the inside, I'm not sure that's enough momentum to carry you through. It seems like from what we've seen tonight, you really need a car pushing you, somebody who's willing to say, hey, let's have a bit of a symbiotic relationship here. I'm going to push you, you're going to pull me, we're going to work together, and it's going to be good for both of us. Now, number 2, right now, he's only got 1 car behind him, and that's the man driving for the guy that he's trying to pass. So I can't expect that the number 2 is going to get a whole lot of help from the number 11.
No, and if the 11 plays his cards right, he could really get the 2 who's trying to drive hard to pass the 29 to almost pull the 11 right around. I mean, one slight move from the 2, one wrong miscalculation, the 11 is going to go right by him, right to the lead.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something you have to consider when you're working with somebody to get up front. You got to time it. Whoa, as we have near contact, the 29 swerving down to throw a block, but it was a little bit late. So Greg Evans had to dive down to the apron. Now they're going to barrel into turn 1 side by side, and I don't think anybody's surprised. You see Tyler Seville, he had a choice there to make. Which lane does he take? Who does he push? Well, he chose to push the boss man, and unfortunately, it wasn't quite enough. It still was a big run for the number 2. He was able to get out front, so Greg Evans back to the point, and probably another sigh of relief, however short-lived it may be. And, well, it was very short-lived, because here comes Will Worsler, the number 11, giving him some support from behind. I'm sure some draft support and maybe even some moral support there in the team chat.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to do all they can to get Greg Evans hung out to dry, and it looks like they might even have it. Maybe it would help the 63 of Johnny Avila. I think that answers your question. He definitely was not happy where he was, as he's now running 4th, battling for 5th.
Yeah, he has worked his way up the grid. It's taken him a little bit of time, but it seems like on the long run, he is kind of excelling. And, as a driver, you might feel like, well, the car doesn't feel that different when the tires start to wear, so they don't matter that much. But from my experience here at a track like this, tire wear does still matter. And that's because when you wear those tires out, and you get these big draft runs into the corner, your car is carrying a ton of momentum into the corner. And if your tires are slick, if they're starting to go baldy and they ain't got the grip, well, all that momentum is just going to carry you right up to the wall. The more you save your tires, the better rotation you have. And that's not necessarily going to make a faster lap time, because technically you could go the same speed around the top as the bottom, depending on how much speed you carry. But what it means is when you have that extra rotation, it means you have more options. You can put your car down low to make a pass if you need to. But if your tires are worn, then suddenly that bottom lane is no longer an option. That's out of the playbook because you have to take the top side. And that can make overtaking a lot more difficult in the long run. So some of these drivers may be focusing on saving a little bit. Johnny Avila seems to be one of them excelling at it.
Absolutely. You've seen him all season long. That's one thing that he can always do. Right at the end of the run, you see that 63 car come alive.
And come alive he has there in third now. He was fifth last time we talked about him just a moment ago. He's gotten around Greg Evans. He's gotten around the number 3 machine of Michael Larch. And that's going to put him up into the podium. So this is a very familiar sight, I would say, having Tyler Seville, Johnny Avila, Greg Evans up here dominating. But all 3 of these drivers who are so used to running up front, they're chasing that number 29 car. And I'll tell you what, Will Worsler is playing some fantastic defense tonight. He's one of the few drivers I've noticed that is really willing to throw these blocks, to kind of put his car where he needs to break the draft when needed, and do what he has to do to keep the lead. And he's got the help. I mean, he's got that number 11. At any race where drafting is key, if you have a teammate with you and nobody else does, that is a massive advantage, and it can absolutely turn the tide of the race.
Absolutely. Your teammate can make your car 3 times as wide as what you can make it. And that's what we're seeing right now. The 63 has really no way to get by the 11, because any move he makes, the 11 is going to make the first block, and the 29 is going to be there to make the second one, and they're going to hold the 1-2 position for as long as they possibly can.
Right, and even if the 63 does make a move, the 11 is not going to go with him. The 11 is not going to help him out unless he's trying to do it for his own personal gain. Like you mentioned, you can pull somebody ahead. You can take the competition and pull them ahead and help them in the short run, and then immediately dip out of their draft and kind of hang them out to dry. It's kind of I would say a frustrating move from a driver's perspective, but it is something you can do, and it's something that we see quite often. But our producer, this is interesting, Jordan. Our producer is telling us that the number 63 of Johnny Avila is saving fuel. Apparently, he is either clutching it or shutting off his engine through the corner. One of the two. I'm going to say he's clutching it. I'm not sure he's turning off the engine. That would be quite excessive. But he's going way down on revs, as you can see. As we ride on board, you can see that little digital dash. It shows you the revs, and he went down to 2,000 at one point. So, saving fuel. I kind of thought nobody was going to go for the one-stop strategy, but maybe it's looking a little bit more viable than we thought for these drivers.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, this is the same group that tried to do this exact same thing at Daytona and the duels earlier this season, and I think they're going to try it again. I can't say it's the play I would go for, but if it works for them, good for them.
Yeah, I've always said there's a reason I'm up in the booth and they're on the track. I've made a lot of predictions that tend not to come true. It's a mystery why 3Wide TV keeps bringing me back on, because I am incorrect, I'd say, about 50% of the time. But I can talk fast. Maybe that's why they bring me back. But a little unexpected, this strategy. And I don't know, man. I got to wonder if the 63 is saving, and he's still on the bumper of the 11, and he's running right with them, nearly identical lap times. Does that mean the other guys are saving as well? Are we seeing a train of cars that are all conserving?
I think we very well could be. I don't think anyone wants to pull out and try to risk it. I think everyone's on the same strategy. And it really makes me wonder, the group that starts with Michael Krobach almost 2 seconds back, are they saving even more than the group that's running 2 seconds ahead of them?
Absolutely. And the bigger question there is, does that second group have a bigger advantage? Because the more cars in front of you, the bigger the pack, the more fuel you're saving. Because that's just that much less air resistance. I mean, and when they do go to pit and they finally put the hammer down and they quit saving, the more cars in a pack, the faster you can potentially go. So they might be a little bit further back right now, but later down the line, that could actually be an advantage because they are the bigger pack. This lead pack right now starts with Will Worsler in first, and then it goes back to AJ Digby there in sixth. And then again, you have to look all the way 2 seconds back to Michael Krobach, and that pack consists of not just 6 cars. Well, actually, no. We've had some cars drop off that pack since the last time I looked. It is a similar size pack, so should be turning pretty similar lap times, and you're right. Maybe the second pack is conserving a little bit more aggressively than the front pack.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out with about 23 laps before the halfway point. Can they save enough to make it to halfway, or are they going to have to pit early and make it a 2-stop race?
It's going to be interesting to see. I think it's really up in the air right now. I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to say that some of these guys are definitely going to try the one-stop strategy, but I don't know. It's going to be tough as the number 69, Adam Jersky, and the Beef Jersky's Cheesecake Machine. He's going to go a lap down. A lot of damage to the front of that machine as the rest of the pack goes by him. He's going to try to get in their draft, try to use them to pull him around the track, but there comes a certain point where you have so much damage that even staying in the draft isn't enough. You're just down on power, and then they will pull away from you. And I think that might be the situation that Jersky is facing, unfortunately.
Yeah, modifieds look cool, but not at Michigan.
Yeah, definitely not a track built for them. The old modifieds, they're more short track machines, I would say. And Adam Jersky is kind of running the experiment here, trying to see how they fare at a 2-mile track. And let me tell you, doesn't look like they fare very well, unfortunately. But props to them. I've always said, that's one of the most admirable things I think you can see in a race is when a driver has a car that's beat to snot. They know they don't have a snowball's chance of winning the race, but they say, you know what, we're close to the playoffs. Every point counts. I'm going to stay out here, and if anything happens to anybody else, I'm going to pass them, and I'm going to take those points. It's just this level of aggression, commitment, and just tenacity that you have to admire, because it's got to be discouraging. Getting in a wreck, I think that was lap 8 that happened. You've got, at that point, 92 laps remaining in the race. That's that's a good 2 hours plus of driving, and you know that you're not really going to be in it. It can be really disheartening. So to see some of these guys just stick it out and stick with it, it's pretty impressive.
Absolutely. It goes back to what you just mentioned. It's the points. The 69 Adam Jersky, I believe he is fairly safely in, but a DNF tonight could easily knock him into a danger zone coming in the next 2 races. That's not where you want to be. So the 69 doing exactly what he did last year, getting every point he possibly can, and that led him to a second place points finish.
Absolutely. And I've been watching, towards the tail end of this lead pack, I've been watching AJ Digby because he has been frantically trying to make some moves. If one of these drivers in the lead pack isn't saving, I would have to say that it's Digby, because he is really sailing it into the corners. He's getting these big runs. He's moved to the inside of Michael Larch a couple times now, but he has not been able to close it out. He just doesn't have the draft help. He hasn't had the machine quite to get around the number 3, but he's trying. So I got to wonder, does he think he's saved enough, and that's why he's kind of taking the lid off of it and he's running as hard as he can, or has he given up on saving? Has he said, you know what, there's no way I'm going to make it, so I'm just going to go all out. I'm going to see what I can do, try to make some passes. Is now a lap car is at the top of the track. That's Brown in the number 15. He is going to let the lead pack go as they go side by side again. So there's what I was talking about right there. The 14 again trying to make the overtake. This time it looks like he's got a little bit of a better chance. There he goes. He gets clear of the 3. Now he's back on the bottom lane. He's going to try and fall in line behind Greg Evans. And that 14's on the move. I don't think he's conserving.
No, I don't think he is, and it kind of makes me wonder, is anyone in the top 6 conserving anymore? You see them start to spread out as they're lapping the 55 of Brian Yazik. Did they come to a realization that they saved enough with the caution that came out earlier? Or have they just all given up and said, you know what, let's go for it, let's go for a 2-stop race? My thought is, if they're going to go for a 2-stop race, you're going to see them coming down pit road very, very soon.
Definitely. It would be very shortly. I mean, we're on lap 30 out of 100. So if you split it up, 2 stops, lap 35, then they'd stop again on lap 70. That would leave them with a 30-lap run to the end, which would be fairly even stints there. So you're right there. I do believe they'd have to come down soon. If we don't see them pit soon, then they are going for it. But, you mentioned, are any of them saving? What have they decided? Another thing to consider, and we talked about it a little bit last week, but the leader sets the pace. If the leader wants to ride, then sometimes the drivers behind him either have to ride or they use that opportunity to say, all right, well, I'm going to conserve as well. I mean, he's taking it easy. I can afford to take it easy. But if the leader gets on that loud pedal and he just starts popping off hot laps left and right, you have no choice as the competition. You can't let him get too far away, especially at a track like this, where it's going to be really hard to make up time on speed alone. You would need draft help. You would need the cards to fall in your favor. So maybe it could be that they were all saving, and then Will Worsler in that 29 said, nope, I'm not saving anymore. I'm going to get on that loud pedal. And that just forced the hands of everybody behind him.
Yeah, the leader definitely does dictate what the rest of the field is going to do. And you don't want to be the driver that does the opposite, because your night just became insanely miserable if you do that.
Absolutely. It most certainly did. But they're going side by side for third. Greg Evans trying to battle it out with the number 63. And of course, those Will Worsler Racing boys up front, they're starting to kind of make a breakaway of their own as they've gained about a 3 to 4 car length gap on third place. And I tell you what, sometimes 2 cars are better than 3 or 4, not because they're faster on their own, just because of the draft. Generally, if you could get 3 or 4 cars to cooperate, they would be faster than a 2-car pack. But it's a whole lot easier to coordinate 2 cars. It's a lot easier to have one guy behind you, pushing you, giving you that bump draft, which I know the 11 does, because looking at the rear bumper of that 29, I see a little bit of paint missing off that thing. That tells me he's been getting some shots from that 11. Got a 3 or a 4-car pack, you can't coordinate that. You can't rely on everybody to bump draft each other and stay in a perfect line and work together as efficiently as possible. So it kind of becomes harder to manage, even if you could theoretically be faster. So with these teammates being up front, I think they have a huge advantage.
Yeah. Absolutely, they have an advantage, and we see them still starting to break away from the 63 of Johnny Avila now by another car length or so. And like you said, two is easier than 4. You can put 4 cars in a row. You can be in the same team channel. You can be doing everything right and still be doing everything wrong. And it can be one of the most frustrating things as a team, because you know all you're doing is trying to help each other, but at the same time, someone in the back's a parachute.
Absolutely, especially if you're not in the same communications. I mean, here in this league, I believe every team has their own Discord channel, so the teammates can talk to one another. But if they want to talk to each other outside of the team, if they want to talk to somebody who's not in their channel, they got to use the race chat, the actual iRacing drivers chat, which that's public. You know, that's public info. So if you're trying to strategize, if you're trying to hatch a plan with the drivers around you, well, you're announcing that plan to the world, and you're giving the drivers that you're trying to conspire against every chance in the world to know what you're going to do and then figure out how to counterattack.
Thinking back to this fuel mileage strategy, we see these guys on lap number 38 right now. It's hard to think that they're going to make it to lap 50 with how hard they're running right now. When do you think, now that we're past lap 35, when do you think we're going to start seeing them come in?
Well, if they're trying to make it, and if they do go for the one-stop strategy, it's definitely going to be right at lap 50. To go any further would be almost absurd and quite frankly, quite needless. But if they're going to pit and make it a 2-stop, if they've given up on the 2-stop strategy, I say the sooner the better. If you've given up on one stop, you've conceded that you have to stop twice, the sooner you get on those fresh tires and you start turning hot laps, the quicker you're going to be in the long run. So if they wait too much longer, then they don't make the one-stop strategy, well, then they've got the worst of both worlds. They didn't short pit and get the advantage of fresh tires, but they also didn't make it far enough for one stop. So either they pit now, or they just keep on going right to lap 50.
And then you run the risk of, do you have enough fuel to make it all the way around for lap number 50? As we see, it looks like, looking at the pit stop strategy icon on the bottom, looks like the only driver to have pitted is the 39 of Pete Baskins right now. He's on the 2-stop strategy. Knowing Pete the way I know Pete, he always likes to try to do something different than everybody else. Might not be the fastest driver in the field, and every now and again you make that. As we now get information that Pete has not pitted, I don't know how to read the graphic on the bottom. My bad. But Pete, like I mentioned, Pete is one of those drivers that's not afraid to try something different because he knows he's not the fastest driver in the field. So do we see someone try to break away and do their own thing here shortly?
It definitely could be. It definitely could be. And when you know that you maybe don't have the speed to take the lead on just driving alone, you're right. It does kind of open up the door where you kind of have more freedom to say, yeah, I can try something different. I can do what the other guys aren't, because what do I have to lose? And in a way, it's extremely freeing and sometimes gives the advantage to the drivers who maybe aren't, the fastest on raw speed. I mean, racing is so much more than just seeing who can go around the track the fastest. If it was just seeing who could go around the track as quickly as possible, well, we'd quit after qualifying. We'd say, well, the pole sitter just won the race, we're done. But there's so much more to it. And drivers like Pete Baskins, they know that. They're smart guys. They know that there is a ton of opportunities, a ton of ways to play this game, and they're going to try every single method that they can think of. Now, my thing that I'm thinking about here, too, is, you mentioned, do they have enough fuel to make it to that lap 50? Do they try to make it and then run out? Now, maybe this is just me manufacturing some potential excitement or drama where it doesn't exist, but this is, in a way, pack racing, and there is no worse place to run out of fuel and go down on power than in the middle of a pack. If one of these drivers, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, in fact, I doubt it will, but if one of these drivers tried to make it to lap 50, they didn't make it, they ran out of fuel, they would be going down on power right in front of a fairly large pack, and that could be a bit of a catastrophe. So got to be nerve-wracking as these drivers try to make it to that lap 50 mark, which I believe that is what they've got to be doing. I mean, there's no way they've gone 43 laps now with Will Wurzler out front, the number 11 behind him. These drivers have been running their laps consistently for 43 laps. They've got to be going the distance. They got to try to make it to 50.
They absolutely have to be trying to at this point. But it brings up to your point. The 29 has been out front for at least 15, 20 laps now. You know he's using more fuel than everybody else. And if there's anybody that's going to run out, it's going to be him. He's going to be the one that's going to run out early. And the last place you want to do that is right here coming off of turn 4, coming to lap 50. Everyone barreling down on the pit road. You don't have power. It can be a nightmare for everybody else, and you included.
And another minor hiccup that these guys are going to encounter is, 50 laps on a set of tires. That is extreme. The tire wear plateaued probably 20 laps ago, Jordan. I mean, back on lap 20, they were running 41-second laps. Here on lap 44, 24 laps later, they're still running 41 seconds. So that means the tires have been at suboptimal grip levels for nearly half of this stint. By the time they go into pit, it'll be well over half. And what that means is when they come to slow down for pit road, it's going to be real difficult to get those cars woed up without locking up the brakes, sliding the tires, and then potentially picking yourself up a speeding penalty. You've got to make sure you get down to speed. And of course, when you get to your pit stall, make sure that you don't slide through it on those old tires.
I guarantee Sam up in the admin booth has his speeding ticket book ready to go and hand them out left and right as they come down on a pit road. That's not what you want tonight. That will be a night ender, especially as there's only been one caution so far. You definitely need a second caution to try to get back from the lead lap, and it's just your night's over if you get a speeding ticket, or even slide through your box, because then you've lost the draft at that point. It's going to be a lot harder to try to catch up.
Right, and right now it's not looking like if that happened, these drivers would be able to rely on a yellow flag to bunch up the field, because we had that one caution back on lap 8, but ever since then, we've gone quite a far distance, and it's remained green. So a very green flag race ever since that incident. So if you make a mistake, you find yourself away from the pack, it's going to be real hard to make that time up. There in the chat, Nikki Wurzler, as we were talking about the fuel mileage and how it may be possible that the 29 doesn't make it on fuel, she said, "Oh goodness, don't say it." Now, Nikki, we're not saying he's going to run out of gas. We're not guaranteeing anything. If it brings you any comfort, I've already mentioned in this broadcast, I'm wrong 90% of the time. So, he might be fine on fuel. We're going to have to wait and see, just like everybody else. But the nerves for these drivers probably starting to build up as those fuel cells get lighter and lighter, and they start to wonder, can we make these last 6 laps before lap 50?
This is probably the most nerve-wracking point of this race, other than what's going to be the last 5 laps, and if they're going to try to make this to lap 50, they got to do it again. They're only doing one stop. They know 50 laps is going to be close, so they've got to do it twice. They're doing it to themselves twice. And yeah, I couldn't do it. There's no way I could do it. I'd be the wimp that's on pit road already, flying by everybody at Mach 12, laughing at them as they're laughing at me, and then they go by me in 10 more laps.
Absolutely, and I think I'm with you there. I probably would have been on pit road. I'm not sure I would have even tried it, but you make a good point that they're not just having to do this nerve-wracking sequence of conserving once, but they do have to do it 2 times. I mean, if they pit at the halfway, well, then you got to do it all over again. And the thing is, I think you know as well as I do, conserving is a lot less feasible in the last half of the race, because the lap 1 to lap 50. You're not even halfway through the race. Everybody's happy to ride, save some fuel, take it easy, do what they need to do. But then that checkered flag gets closer and closer, and the enticement of that trophy at the end of the day gets a little bit closer in your field of view, and suddenly your patience or your willingness to ride, well, that sails off into the sunset. And if you wait too much, if you ride around and conserve too much, well, then it might not just be your patience sailing off into the sunset. It could be the leader, because maybe the leader doesn't conserve. He drives away, and it turns out nobody can make it because nobody conserved enough, but he was far out ahead, and he just got himself the win. So a lot of different angles they got to look at this from, and it's not going to be over until that checkered flag flies for any of these guys.
Absolutely, and the last thing I'd want to be doing is leading this race and going down the backstretch and hear that thing spit and sputter, knowing I could have pitted twice and not had this issue. I wouldn't even know where to start. I'd probably leave the computer on and walk away for a little while.
Man, I have been there, done that. Something goes so just catastrophically wrong that you don't even know how to respond. You just push the power button and you go think about life for a while. That would be the situation, I think, for any of these drivers if they conserved the entire race. They made it the first 50-lap stint, but then on lap 99, coming down the backstretch, they ran out of fuel. That would be absolutely heart-wrenching. And the sad part is that is a real possibility. I mean, like I said, it's so much harder to conserve in the last half of the race because nobody wants to. Everybody wants to get out as far ahead as they can. They want to push their car, and they want to make sure that, you know, they're not the guy who is leading the race all the time and burning up their fuel, but also maybe not the guy who is riding behind and waiting too much. It's a hard game to play, a lot of things to think about. We are on lap 51, and I do believe that we have yet to see anybody pit. Now, this does change things because you know, we had that yellow flag. That gave them a few extra laps of fuel. I'd say probably it was a pretty quick caution, and, you know, it isn't oval surface. It probably gave them an extra lap and a half, 2 laps of fuel, would you say, Jordan?
Yeah, I'd say right around lap and a half, 2 laps of fuel, but this is surprising me. They've obviously saved a lot more than we thought they did as we're coming down to lap number 52 right now.
And so here we go. As the number 14 gets around the number 3. Our producer is saying that they pitted on lap 8. I don't believe that's accurate. I think most of these guys stayed out. So I think at most they would have saved... I guess a lot... Okay, so some of these guys did come down lap 8. I guess we missed that there, Jordan. We both looked at that and we both agreed, yeah, no, I don't think anybody pitted. Apparently we've got our blindfolds on because the graphic is saying they all pitted on lap 8. So that's going to make it a little bit easier for these guys as they are able to probably, I would say, make it to at least lap 54. And that would be, you know, taking it easy. Possibly lap 56 if they play their cards right. And if the admins are right and 50 laps really is possible, then you wouldn't see them come down till lap 58. So that makes getting to the end of this race with one more stop definitely feasible, but still not easy, especially if you're that number 29. I'm a little surprised, honestly, Jordan, how long the 29 has been leading. Because, like you mentioned, he's using up more fuel than anybody in this pack. He does not have the advantage of having a car in front of him, blocking that wall of air, pulling him around the track, conserving that fuel, and he's been out front for, I would say, 30-plus laps now. I've seen a lot of situations when you have teammates like this out front at a fuel conservation race where you'll see them swap positions. You know, the 29 would say, hey, I'm going to drop back and save for a while, then the 11 takes point, and they try to split up that fuel usage between them. We're not seeing that tonight. It's been the 29 leading this march the entire way. So maybe they're a little bit more comfortable on fuel than we had assumed there.
Yeah, they definitely seem to be much more comfortable than we thought they were. Obviously, if they all did pit on lap 8 like the graphic shows, then they're clean and green to the rest of the way after the next pit stop. But I've noticed in the last 5 or so laps, they've gotten a lot more racy. The 2 of Greg Evans, the 6-3 Johnny Velia, the 14 of AJ Digby, they're all swapping 3rd through 5th right now. And I kind of got to question why they're racing so hard right now. I mean, other than trying to get a leg up on when they come to pit stops, but you know you got to pit. I'd almost try to pass them on pit lanes instead of pass them on the track because they're making some big moves, and those big moves could turn catastrophic here really soon.
Yeah, especially trying to make those bold maneuvers on old tires. Sometimes you feel pretty confident in your car, you dive into the corner and you think, yep, I'm going to make this stick. And then it doesn't stick because you're on 50-lap old tires and you're at Michigan International, which does tend to eat away at the tires. So definitely a bit of maybe an unnecessary risk. But again, that's, I'd say, from a spectator's perspective. It's a lot different, I think you know pretty well there, when you're in the car and you see those cars in front of you. Suddenly that logic, that sort of calm, calculating mindset, that's gone. It's, I got to beat these guys. I got to drive as fast as I can. And that's really all your tunnel visioned in on. As now it looks like Greg Evans is going to try to make a move for 2nd place. He does stay to the inside, but he's not quite going to get there yet. But it looks like down into turn 3, Greg Evans is going to get clear with the help of the number 3. So that puts the number 2 up into P2. And now, for the first time in a long time, the 29 doesn't have that guardian in Tyler Seville. He's got only competition behind him. That could be a game changer.
Absolutely. Not only is Tyler Seville no longer in 2nd, he's no longer in 3rd. The 3 of Michael Arch came right behind the number 2 of Greg Evans as we see Seville try to make the move back to get third spot back. And this is kind of interesting. It's good to see Michael Arch running P3. You got to kind of question, is he working with Greg Evans, or is he just knowing the 2 cars fast and going to try to follow along as Greg Evans looks to the inside of the 29 Will Warsler?
Well, he could definitely be working with the number 2. I think he probably saw how well the number 11 and the number 29 were working together, as now the number 2 does take the point. But we are showing on our Through ITV multicam, they did pit under the first caution. This was not shown because we were focused in on the replay watching the carnage that ensued. But we do have the leaders headed down pit road. We've got the number 29, the number 11, and of course AJ Digby. And the rest of that lead pack, I believe, is still on a track. Evans, Larch, and Evans and Larch, the 2 drivers that remained out.
Yeah, I bet they're trying to get a cleaner pit road. You don't want to pit with everybody that's around you. That's going to create more problems. So I look to see the 2 and the 3 come down pit road this time, as the World Warsler team is down on pit road right now.
And, I mean, fresh tires are good for about a second and a half, 2 seconds a lap here. So this could be a big advantage for the Will Warsler Racing machines coming down pit road, and Johnny Avila, because they're going to have 1 extra lap at least on fresher tires, which could put them cycling out pretty much beyond the drafting range of the cars behind that were challenging, such as Greg Evans. Greg Evans and Michael Larch, they were very fast. They were competing for the lead there. But if they stay out too long on these older tires, that could work against them.
Yeah, absolutely. As we see the 2 Greg Evans on pit road right now, as well as the 43 of Richard Fletcher, you don't want to stay out too long, not with the plateau of the tires we've seen, especially with a group of Will Warsler guys with Johnny Avila mixed in. You don't want to break them up, because it's just not going to work for you.
No, it's absolutely not. Now, where does Will Warsler cycle out? He is going to go around Michael Larch. There he goes. Now, the number 2 of Greg Evans, he got a much better pit stop, and it's going to be a lot closer between them as they come out of turn 4. Greg Evans is going to re-merge, and it looks like he is going to re-merge with the lead, but with no draft and he's still winding that engine up, there is a firm possibility that these Will Warsler machines could just train right past him. We'll have to see. Into 3 and 4, Greg Evans is going to continue to hold this lead, and surprisingly, pitting 1 lap later, he cycled out up front, and he's actually further ahead now than he was prior to the sequence.
Absolutely. As we look on top of the leaderboard, it looks like the 27 of Drew Carroll, the 84 of Woody Mahan, and the 72 of Michael Krobach must have pitted a little bit earlier than we thought they did, because they're now leading the event.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we missed them pitting, and that actually put them way out ahead. Drew Carroll with about a second advantage over Will Warsler and about a 10th over Woody Mahan there. So all of these drivers, I thought this race was going to be essentially for the lead once the top 4 pit, for the top 3 pit, but they'd already pit. So this is not racing frenzy. The number 2 did not cycle out with an advantage. He actually cycled out there in 4th. And these drivers ahead, well, if they work together, if they use their heads and they really focus on using this draft and trying to pull away, then who knows? Maybe they're going to be the big winners in all of this. Of course, their pitfall is that they're going to have less fuel on this run. They might have to focus on conservation a little bit more because they did pit 4 laps earlier, and without a caution to help them, things might be pretty close. But look at Greg Evans here. He is just getting a huge run, and unfortunately, the draft is not going to be enough to stop the charge that he is staging on those fresher tires, as he is going to move up into second place right around Woody Mahan. And now his sights are set on that number 27, Drew Carroll. Now, Drew is one heck of a defensive driver. He's had a lot of good runs, but with those older tires, I'm not sure he's going to be able to do much about this.
No, and I'm starting to wonder as we see what's going on here, the 2 of Greg Evans in a Chevrolet pulling ahead of the Ford line. I'm wondering if the Fords are a little bit of a disadvantage tonight. We've seen Chevys and Will Warsler and Greg Evans up front, a Toyota and Tyler Seville all up front tonight, but they've really seemed to gap the Ford group. I'm starting to wonder if there's a little bit of a disadvantage on this track with the aero package for the Fords.
You know, that is a real possibility. We had an issue a few months back on iRacing that had actually been a problem for about as long as these cars have been on the service, where somebody found out that the Chevrolets were actually at a slight motor disadvantage. They discovered that, I believe, by going through the coding of the game. It was a very minuscule disadvantage, but it was there. And then they had to rework the engines of these cars, to try to get them closer and try to get them the same. So that just kind of tells you that, while the iRacing service says it doesn't matter which car you buy, they all have the same aero, they all have the same engine. That might not necessarily be true. You can't really take them on their word for that, because that issue slipped under the radar for years before it was finally discovered. So you could be right. Maybe there's something about these Fords here at this 2-mile racetrack where the aero is just dragging them back a bit, because you are 100% hitting the nail on the head. Those Chevrolets have been far and away the powerhouse tonight.
And it goes back to your point where the Chevys were at a disadvantage. When you rework the code, maybe you gave them a little bit too much this time. I mean, iRacing is very good with their beta testing and trying to make sure nothing slips through the cracks, but if it slips through one way, one adjustment the other direction could have been a little bit too much. So maybe they need to relook at this again. I mean, it's quite obvious right now that Toyotas have some sort of advantage over this group of Fords.
Absolutely. And another way to look at it as well is, with oval racing, the most minuscule difference in power, in aero, in handling can make a huge difference. If your car handles just a little bit better or has just a little bit more speed, it means a lot, especially at a track like this where it's all about speed. It's not necessarily the handling. It's just about how fast you can get that thing to go. And of course, as a driver, how smart of a move can you make? How accurate can you be when it comes to making your moves and thinking through your strategy? But for the most part, speed is so important. So if they went just, a hair too far on those Chevrolets, you're absolutely right. And you can't even really blame iRacing, because like I said, oval racing is unlike any other form of motorsport. It is incredibly car dependent, and just tiny little differences make all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. I don't want a iRacing coder's job by any stretch of the imagination. Look at the numbers that they deal with on a daily basis. Just makes my head spin as it is. And I definitely commend them for everything that they've given us. And I don't fault them at all for tiny little errors that are made. I'm just glad that there's a community that's around us that does a very good job of pointing them out if they are found. And iRacing is very quick to fix them when they do realize it's there.
Absolutely. I mean, when that issue with the Chevys was found, it wasn't about I think a day and a half later. There was no planned updates, no scheduled maintenance or anything like that. But they got off their butts. They immediately went to work fixing the perceived issue, and got it corrected to the best of their ability. So they definitely don't waste time fixing any issues. And again, this is just us speculating. It could be that these cars are literally all identical. Maybe they got it exactly right, but we're just noticing, just a little bit of a trend we've seen that these Chevrolets tend to be doing pretty well. Noticing the number 11 is actually not in a Chevrolet. He's in a Toyota Camry. And you know what I've noticed? He's actually had some trouble making some passes. It seems like he's kind of fallen back through the pack a few times, because he goes to make that pass, the parachute comes out, and suddenly he falls back a little bit. So maybe even the Toyota's not quite on par with these Chevrolets.
Absolutely. And another point to that is some drivers can see the air better than others. I know they always talked about Dale Earnhardt being able to see the air at Daytona and Talladega. Now with this new drafting package, that's kind of what you got to do every track you go to. You got to be able to see the air, and maybe some of these guys are just better at quote unquote seeing the air than other people, as we see the 14 and 27 swapping positions back and forth through turns 3 and 4. Maybe they're just better at seeing it, or I don't know.
It definitely could be I like to imagine it like, the old draft meter in the old EA NASCAR games. It would tell you exactly how much draft you had. Some drivers, some guys, they just kind of have that in their head. They can just kind of feel how much draft they have, and they know kind of instinctively what their car is going to be capable of with the runs that they get. Now, I'm a little curious what is going to happen with Greg Evans. Now, he is in the lead, and he's got a pretty decent advantage. Just like Will Wursler on the previous stint, the 2-car has managed to break himself out to about a 4 or 5 car length gap, and he's maintaining it pretty well. Now, that 2-car has been strong all night long. He's one of the few that's been able to consistently make passes up high, make passes down low, wherever he needs to go. So we know he's got a strong car, and we also know that he is a very motivated driver. He wants this win. I'd say if we had to place a bet on who wants to win the most tonight, I'm going to put that money on Greg Evans. He wants to walk away with the trophy tonight more than anybody else. That's going to make him a fierce opponent. So how does Will Wursler Racing react? What is the strategy here? I mean, they've got the advantage of teamwork. The 11 and the 29 can work together, and that's something that the 2-car can't rely on. but is that going to be enough, do you think?
The willpower enough, I kind of say this jokingly, obviously Will Worsler in second place might be enough. I don't think Will's picked up a win this season. Last year we saw him pick up a few. We know Tyler Seville's picked up 1 or 2 runs this season. So while Greg Evans is hungry for another one, as he hasn't had one in a few weeks, Will Worsler hasn't had one all year. So I think the willpower behind the 29 car is going to outweigh the 2 here eventually, and maybe even see a little bit of a bumper put to the 2 car as we come down to the closing laps if it comes down to it.
It absolutely could be. And, I should remind the audience at home that Will Worsler led the majority of this race up until now, until the 2 got around him. And he's had a phenomenal run even still there in second place. One of the best races that he's had all year long. In the first chat in the live stream tonight when we went live was Will Worsler himself saying, yeah, I'm just not feeling this race. So, man, how quickly things change, especially when you find out that you've got the car underneath you and that you've got the teamwork to maybe make something happen.
Yeah, going from not feeling it to leading and running second must be a real nice feeling right now. It'd be interesting to see what the 29's saying right now. If we could, it'd be nice to try to talk to him. Obviously, we're not going to where he's driving 200 miles an hour right now. That'd probably end up really badly. But it'd just be nice to get in his head and see if he's happy or if he's still not feeling it or what he's going through right now.
Yeah, it is possible sometimes as a driver to be having the best run in the world, but if it could just be a little bit better, you're still not happy. And he is in second right now. He is looking at that number 2, and he hasn't quite been able to get around him yet. So even though he's had a phenomenal run, it is fully possible he's sitting there in his driver's seat saying, man, I hate this track, I hate the aero, I hate this car, I hate everything. But, from an outsider's perspective, he's just having a phenomenal standout night. And behind him, I should point out, Tyler Seville, he had some internet issues last week, and now, well, he just blinked out again for about half of that corner. That could be a scary thing to see, especially if you're Will Worsler. That number 11 has been his safety net. It has been his best, I would say, asset to try and win this race. If the number 11 fell out of the running, if he had an internet connection issue, that would be a huge blow for Will Worsler and, of course, Tyler Seville, who would be out of the event.
Absolutely, every point matters, and you don't want to lose the event like we mentioned before on an internet connection, because that is just a punch in the gut.
It absolutely is. Looks like the 29 is starting to pull away a little bit from the 11. I think maybe Tyler Seville said, okay, I know I was blinking. I'm going to stay back a little bit just in case I pop out and then pop back in. That is the last thing you want to do on iRacing is blink out and reappear inside of another car and cause a bunch of chaos, especially if that other car that you're reappearing in is your boss. So definitely wouldn't be a good situation. I think Tyler Seville backed it off once he started blinking. His connection looks stable now, so I would expect him to get back on the throttle, get back in that traffic, and then get back up there to work with his teammate. But I think he made the smart move there. The number 2 is continuing to extend the gap, though. I mean, he's got up to 0.3 of a second as they cross the line. Well, actually 0.4 of a second as they cross the line that time. And I would say this is the biggest lead that we've seen a leader have pretty much since the drop of the green. I've got to wonder if the 29 and the 11 aren't biding their time, or if maybe the 2 car is just really pushing that car, trying to get out of drafting distance, and he's saying, forget the conservation, forget trying to save fuel, forget tire wear. I'm going to get as far away from these guys as possible because I know how fast they are.
I don't know if I really want to be out that far of a lead right now. I think the 29, the 11, the 63 are all saving tire right now, as we see the Ford's trying to make a little bit of a move on the bottom here. I think they're all trying to save as much tire as they can to make a late release charges with 24 laps to go. If I'm Greg Evans, I'm backing it off, getting back to their front bumper just a little bit. You obviously don't want to let them reel themselves all the way back in, but I'm keeping them in check, making sure I can play the chess game the way I need to.
I'd have to agree with you there. I think you're right. I think laying back could be the move, like we said. Fresh tires maybe don't necessarily equate to much better lap times at this track when you've got the draft and everybody's kind of running the same. But again, it just opens up what kind of lanes you can run, where you can put your car. And the more options you have to pass, well, the more that your opponent has to account for. If your opponent knows that you have to go high, well, he's only got to block one lane, and that's easy to do. But if you can go high, middle, low, he doesn't know where you're going to go. He doesn't know what to block. And, of course, his car is only one car length wide. So You can only go so many places at once. It makes it a whole lot easier for you to attack when you can use whichever lanes are there. So it could be a huge advantage for the WWR machines to be conserving. And Johnny Avila there in the 63. He has been running up front ever since he got there. I mean, he started a little bit further back, just out here inside the top 10, ran 8th or 9th for 10 laps or so, and then he kind of turned on the rocket boosters. He made a few passes and just a few corners, got up into 4th, where he's kind of run the majority of this race. And that's another driver that you got to wonder, is he just biding his time? Is he waiting around to try and potentially make a move late into this event? Because not to bring movie references into it, but I was watching Fast and the Furious 9 the other day, and in the words of Dominic Toretto, too soon. You don't want to use your tires up too soon. You don't want to turn on those rocket boosters too quick. You want to wait until the end of the race. And I think that's what some of these guys are doing.
Absolutely. As we see them start to reel in the 2 of Greg Evans just a little bit, it's almost like he's either listening to us or the Will Watchful racing drivers are trying to make fools out of us. One of the two. The second one's probably a little bit easier to do. But we see them start to catch the 2, and the 2 is on defense mode. I mean, he's got to try to make the block, as we see the 29 make the move down into turn number 1 on the bottom. Evans has got to try to defend on the outside now.
And it doesn't look like he's... Oh, no, he was able to defend. He got back to the quarter panel of the 29. Will Wurzler was clear for just a fraction of a second. He was not able to throw the block in time to complete the slider, and that allowed the number 2 to get the run back to the quarter panel, and of course that side drafted him. Of course, the side draft is going to slow down the car that you're next to, which is what happened to the 29, and they're going to remain side by side as they work their way through 3 and 4. Now the advantage, I think, is going to go to Will Wurzler, because as he falls back, he's going to be able to put that right front right against the number 2's left rear and side draft him for a change, which will push him. And now, look at this, player 3 has entered the game. Number 11, Tyler Seville, gives a push to the boss man, tries to get him clear of the number 2 into turn 1. And contact is made.
Big contact made in the center of turns 1 and 2 as 29 drifted up just ever so slightly into the 2. That's going to allow Greg Evans to take the lead back over as they go down the backstretch. Big block down to the inside, trying to push the little 29 all the way to the white line as they're side by side going into turn 3.
And this time, I think Will has it. He's going to get clear of the number 2. And man, nope, here comes the crossover. Greg Evans comes back to the bottom as the 29 gets tight. That's going to put him back to the lead. It is a revolving door for this lead as the 11 gives a huge shot to the number 29. He in turn was being pushed by the 63, who in turn was being pushed by the 14. That was a huge, huge stack up, and ultimately was enough to give the 29 a push into the corner. Unfortunately, doesn't have the rotation. And now, as the car gets tighter and tighter, he is struggling for grip on that bottom lane. It's going to be hard for him to make a move on that number 2.
Absolutely. You got to cool that right front tire down as he made that block down the front stretch. The only thing I can think of is, like you said, they were bumper to bumper to bumper. That's an insanely dangerous block so late in the race. I mean, everyone's trying to take every inch they can. You move up in front of one person like that and stack everyone up, you might not get turned, but the guy sitting 2 or 3 cars behind you might find themselves sliding through the grass. So they're still bump drafting down the front straightaway right now.
Bump drafting indeed, and I gotta wonder if the 29 continues to deteriorate on handling, if that tire gets worse and he gets tighter and tighter and he starts to feel like, I can't make a move on the number 2, this race is winding down. At what point does he maybe, and does he at all say, well, okay, my car's fried, I've pushed it too hard, I don't think I got this, but I'm gonna let the number 11 around and I'm gonna try to push him up front. Is that something that crosses Will Wurzler's mind?
As a competitor, in 18 laps to go, no matter who's right behind you, I think you're going to try to get everything you can out of it. Especially right now, with, like I mentioned before, Will hasn't won a race yet this year. The 11, the 63 all have. Don't look now, though, sitting in P6 is Michael Krobach and AJ Digby in P5. They haven't won this season either, so you know they're hungry. It's turning into a really strong finish compared to what we saw early in the race.
It absolutely is. I'll tell you what, let's see exactly how the number 29 of Will Wurzler is navigating this 2-mile circuit. Let's see what he's doing to try and close in on this number 2. We'll go for a Shano FX overdrive on board. And it looks like as we return from our Shano FX Overdrive, the number 2 lost the lead in a big way. He's fallen back into the clutches of several drivers behind him. AJ Digby running right on his passenger side door, not giving him an inch to work with as he continues to fall victim to this sort of parachute that we've mentioned so many times tonight, Jordan. You know, he's got so many cars in a line to his outside. He's got no choice but to fall back. And that is really devastating for the driver in the number 2 when you only got 14 laps remaining as we go 3 wide. The number 2 sliding up the track, a little bit of contact made. Nobody loses control. Everybody keeps it going. And now it is up to Greg Evans in that number 2 to try to rebuild. He's got to fall back, regroup, and try to stage one last charge at it, but the clock is ticking. If you take a look at the replay on the top of your screen on the 3-wide TV multicam. Oh, wait, nope, that is live, so that was more contact. That was a second hit to the old 27 car there, Drew Carroll. The number 2, I think he's driving a little bit frustrated there, Jordan, with all the contact that he's been making these last few laps, how hard he's pushing. I'm thinking he's not too pleased about falling back this way.
No, not at all. I mean, he was running the race that he needed to run. The 29 of Will Wurzler, as you saw, got a wicked run, and they swapped the lead back and forth on that lap. And now the 2 car is just falling back like a rock. I mean, there's nothing left for him to do. I think he burnt up everything in the tank. Maybe he's saving something for a late race run, but I think he's too far back at this point to make a run for the lead.
Absolutely. Again, we're so close to the end of this event as we go 3 wide again almost. Man, oh man, now we're riding on board with the number 63. He's in the middle of this fray. You know, when we were seeing those 2 separate packs forming and everybody was kind of riding single file, I kind of thought that's how the rest of this race was going to play out. But I mean, if you look at the scoring and timing, those 2 packs have merged. They've come together. 1st through 9th are separated only by a second. And now, at this stage in the race, rightfully so, none of these drivers are content to run single file. They want to make moves. They want to get out front. They want to take this thing for themselves. So this race is heating up at the tail end.
Absolutely is. As we come to the start-finish line this time, it's going to be 11 laps to go. The 29 of Will Wurzler back to where he was for the beginning part of the race. But you got to wonder, does the 11 and the 63 want to ride behind him? And also, the 14 AJ Digby running P4 right now. I know he hasn't won this season. He's going to be hungry to try to make a move. Does he try to make a move on the boss man? And does he pull the 72 with him when he does it?
Again, I have to wait and see. All I know is there is probably one very nervous Nikki Wurzler watching the stream as she is watching the team that we all know she's the real owner of. Run 1-2 right now as they continue to lead the way as they have for so long. But man, it is not a surefire thing. They've got everybody breathing down their neck. It is WWR versus the world right now, Jordan.
That it is. We see the Fords in the back trying to mount a charge again. It makes you wonder, were they saving a little bit more than everybody else? Or were they just making liars of us, which, you know, pretty possible to do. But the last few laps have been a completely different race than what we saw early on, and I'm really happy to see this. This is what we come to a racetrack like this for. You want to see 2-3 wide. You want to see big slingshot moves coming into the corner. That's what this drafting package is all about, and that's what we're seeing right now.
Absolutely, and we've also got the Joy of Driving in the chat. They're a regular in the stream, and of course you could say they're a little bit of a fan of that number 72 car, who's a little bit further back, and we have a caution. Michael Larch, the cause on the backstretch. Oh boy, Jordan, this absolutely turns this entire race on its head. We'll discuss that further as we look at the replay. Michael Larch in the number 3 on the high side. Looks like he just comes down a little bit into that number 72. A huge paved runoff is going to allow him to slide straight into that inside safer barrier, and a ton of damage to the front of that number 3. And I got to say, that's quite a shame. Michael Larch had a great qualifying effort. He was running really well all night long. He was a driver that, you know, in terms of points, he really could have used a good day today, and it looked like he was going to get it until then.
Absolutely. It was definitely good to see the 3 of Michael Larch having a good run. It's a shame to see it come to an end like this. I was really hoping to see him finish at least in the top 5. He was definitely a contender to even possibly get a top 3 or even a win where he was sitting right there. Definitely a shame to see him wreck tonight.
Yeah, definitely. I think nobody wanted to see that. Even the competitors probably didn't want to see anybody kind of suffer that fate for sure. But man, I think, first of all, you have to take tires. There's no way you don't take tires at this situation. The question is, who's going to have the better stop? Is anybody going to make any mistakes? As there goes Will Wurzler with a bit of a late entry. Maybe he was trying to feel out the competition, see what they were going to do. That's the kind of the disadvantage that you have, Jordan, when you're the leader. If you're a little bit further back in the pack, you can watch the guys ahead of you, and if they duck into pit road, you follow them. If they don't, you follow them. You can kind of let them lead the way and let them kind of make the choice for you. But if you're the leader, you kind of have to be the first one to make the choice, and you could very easily giving the advantage to the competition behind you. So that could be why Will Worsler was so hesitant to make that turn down pit road. He wanted to see what everybody else was going to do.
Absolutely. I think back to a few years, the Cup Series, I believe it was Jeff Burton. I don't remember exactly. As you see a race off pit road, it looked to me like the 11 at Tyler Seville might have beat Will Worsler off a pit road.
Oh, man, no love lost between teammates. The number 11 beats Boss Man out of pit road. It's going to give him a slightly better starting position. And our producer is saying, we just got word the number 11 is fired. We're just kidding. He's secure in his job. But that's going to be interesting to see. And of course, I believe there is cars ahead of those two. Actually, no. That will put Tyler Seville up into the lead. So Tyler Seville being the control car here, how much of an advantage is that, Jordan?
That's a huge advantage. I mean, Tyler Seville dictates what's going to happen on this start. I mean, you see the 29 Will Worsler is going to start second. The 63 Johnny Avila, who's been working with Will Worsler Racing all race long, going to be starting third. And the 14 AJ Digby starting fourth. You dictate who's going to be behind you. You dictate what's going to happen, and you dictate where Boss Man's going to be. If it's going to work better for the two of you to flip flop on your normal sides, then that's what you're going to do. If you're Tyler Seville, you're also thinking about come into this restart. Man, I want another win because it's going to help me go into the points.
Absolutely. I think both those drivers are going to give it their all. I don't think there's going to be any question of well, is anybody going to take it easy and give it to one or the other? No. Both these drivers, Tyler Seville, Will Worsler, they both want this win for their own reasons. And they may be teammates, they might be owner-driver, but they are going to drive it out and fight as if they didn't even know each other, more than likely, which maybe that's an advantage to some of these cars behind. I mean, if you're in row 2, row 3, that's kind of putting you in the catbird seat. I know Joy of Driving was rooting for the 72 car there in chat, and the 72, well, he's starting on row 3. If something happens on this front row, if somebody spins their tires, if somebody gets sideways and there's a bit of a wreck and he's able to avoid it, I mean, you can't count him out. It is truly anybody's game as we come to this late restart.
Absolutely. I think we're going to take the green flag with either 7 or 8 laps to go here, and all bets are off the table. It's going to be 3-4 wide as we come to take the green flag, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see another caution as we've got 7 to go right now. We see on the graphics, so 6 to go when they take the green flag. So really 5 hard laps of racing is what we're going to see, and I would not be surprised to see another caution.
I'm right there with you. If I was a betting man, I would say this is not the final caution of the event. But it's going to be, like you said, 1 lap of wind-up and then 5 laps of hard racing, so we'll see if we can get that in clean. That caution also really helped out the number 2 of Greg Evans as they come to the green there. Number 11, Tyler Seville, gets a good jump pulling the 63. Will Worsler falling back slightly on that high lane. And it looks like they're going to go 2 wide behind him. Woody Mahan alongside the number 72. And, for a minute, I thought they were going to go 3 wide back there behind the leaders. Tyler Seville in that number 11, he is going to lead the way. We have made it out of turn 2, and we have gone a ways without anybody. Whoa, contact, 63 and 84. I saw a tire come up off the ground there, and yet somehow they kept it straight. More contact. Woody Mahan into the 14. Greg Evans collected. Caution flag flies for the 3rd time.
Didn't even make it a whole lap before another caution comes out. Desperation moves. You're coming down to the end. You can see the checkered flag in your sights. You see one of the best finishes you're going to have of the season. And contact is made, and it's out the window.
Yeah. I think we both saw that one coming, Jordan, but it doesn't make it any easier. That's rough to see some real power players taken out so late. I mean, Greg Evans, he's ran so well tonight, had the car to win. He's been looking for a bit of a redemption arc after a few bad runs, and it looks like tonight might not be the night. We're not sure how much damage he has, but it's got to be substantial. I mean, if he lucked out, you can see the 84 just kind of went through him there, so perhaps not too much damage, as AJ Digby has substantial damage in the 84 as well, I'm sure. The luckiest driver in all of that definitely had to be Woody Mahan. I mean, he drove up on the fender of another car, got his tire up in the air right there, and he kept it going in the right direction. No worse for wear. That is incredibly lucky. When you get the car that sideways, and then that happens at 180 miles an hour, it's not very often you drive away.
No, not at all. But you got to kind of wonder the way the car took off going into turn 3 when he was side by side with the 14. Did it break something when the 63 made contact with the 84? Because the way he went into turn 3 looked like the thing just did not turn for him, and unfortunately it collected the 14 and the 2.
It could have been. It could have also just been he got a late entry into the corner. Maybe he didn't know there was still cars to his high side. It could have been a panic situation. I mean, it's easy to do. That was a very frantic gaggle of cars. I mean, you can't always make the right move all the time. But yeah, just a rough situation. Looks like Greg Evans is remaining on track. How much damage he has, I couldn't tell you. Sometimes you could be in a car that looks pristine, but under the hood, you got some radiator damage, you got some engine damage. So we're not entirely sure. The car looks, for the hit that he took, I mean, he had literally another car phase through him. And other than having a little bit of front end damage, maybe having that car no clip through him might have saved his night, because otherwise that would have been a hit that very easily could have totaled that car.
Yeah, absolutely. He could have gotten lucky with the iRacing Phantom. That happens not often, but we have seen it happen before, where car spins up in front of you and you just get lucky enough to hit it in just the right way that it phantoms you right through it, and you come out with minimal or even no damage. You can see a little bit of a crinkle on the front of that number 2 car. I don't honestly think it's going to hurt him bad enough on this late restart to make him drop like a parachute too bad. He might even still be able to contend for the win.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we do have, I believe, sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Jenko Racing says, wonder if he couldn't see the corner entry being on the bumper of the 63, and that is a phenomenal point that we don't really mention, but the field of view, the visibility in these cars is not always amazing, especially at these races where you're bump drafting, you're right up on the bumper of another car. You sit incredibly low in these stock cars. It's not like sitting in your street car where you got it all raised up and you're way up above the steering wheel. No. A lot of these guys are sitting with their eyes barely above the steering wheel, and then they got these tall stock cars right in front of them. It's very easy to be focused on bump drafting, especially, the 84 had that contact with the 63. He was probably more focused on the 63 and trying not to wreck than he was his turning point. He could have just completely missed the entry and not even known it because he just couldn't see it. So that's a great point, and that does happen week in and week out across a ton of form of motorsports. I mean, you get right up on a guy and suddenly your breaking point isn't the sign that's off on the track or the white line on the apron. Suddenly the car in front of you is your reference point, and that can be real hard to navigate.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing you want to be doing is trying to look through the spoiler of these cars, especially with the size of them now, that they're not the small spoilers like they used to be. They're big old fins on the back of these things, and if you're tucked up on the bumper of somebody, you can't see. There's just no way possible. You're not going to be able to see anything, and that's definitely a very real possibility for what happened in that wreck.
And these spoilers are so tall that they even have the top of the spoiler as clear Lexan. They do not paint the top of these spoilers to try to give the driver something to look through. And you can kind of notice that on the broadcast feed if you look closely. But even that doesn't help a whole lot, because even then you're still looking through their rear windshield and then through their front windshield. And by then you've lost so much. But the number 11 is going to get a great start with 63 behind. Again, that high line not quite moving. I got to wonder if the high line just doesn't have a lot of grip for these restarts. As number 2, Greg Evans, he's going to fall back a ways, potentially some engine damage from that wreck. We'll have to see how he handles it. But they are 2 wide for second place as we are on lap 99. Looks like number 29, Will Wurzler, tried to side draft Johnny Avila in that 63. Didn't quite make it happen. They're going to be single file down the backstretch, but I don't see this single file lasting very long.
No, absolutely not. As we're coming down to turns number 3 and 4, we're going to pick up the white flag as we come across our finish line this time by. I don't see this staying the way it's going to right now. Desperation moves, I think, is what we're going to see here very shortly as the 29 of Will Wurzler sits in 3rd place. Don't expect him to stay there very much longer.
And you got to wonder, how much are these guys going to be willing to work with each other? Of course, the 27, Drew Carroll, and the 29, they're not teammates, but they both have one thing in common, and that's that they want to get to the front. You'd think they'd want to work together to do so, but there goes Drew Carroll on the bottom. No teamwork or dream work there. He just went to the bottom, and he tried to make the move, and it did not stick. That's going to make all of them fall back as they go 3 wide for 3rd, and out front, Tyler Seville is going to come through 3 and 4 for the final time. He's got a 3 car length advantage over Johnny Avila in that number 63. And as he comes to the checkered, it's going to be no competition from behind. The number 11 is going to walk away from Michigan, the winner.
What a run by Tyler Seville to pick up the win. Almost out of nowhere as he stole it from the boss man, Will Worsler. Second goes to the 63 of Johnny Avila, and Michael Krobach stealing third place tonight.
Yeah, Michael Krobach, we mentioned he was lurking a little bit further back in that lead pack. And, we kind of said if anything happens up front, he's got the chance to be in the catbird seat to capitalize on it. And he might not have capitalized on it and got a win, but he capitalized on it and got himself a podium, which is a good point stay. And like you said, we're so close to the playoffs that every single point counts no matter where you are in the grid. And good day for him. Just an incredible race all around. And Tyler Seville, he didn't lead too many laps, but he led the ones that counted.
That he definitely did. If you're going to do it and you're going to ride second all race long, what better way to finish it out than to win by only leading, 5 laps?
Yeah, around about there. Looks like a little bit of a congratulatory bump there from the 63 as the 11 maybe trying to get a little sideways there. I don't think he can quite get it sideways the way he wants to celebrate and burn it down, but he is going to try and... Oh, there he goes again. Looks like he's tried several times to get it sideways and just now finally succeeds. Maybe a better race car driver than he is a stunt driver.
It's always fun when Will Worsler Racing wins a race because you don't get one burnout, you get multiple.
Yeah, they are all down on the track celebrating. Even drivers that aren't quite members of the team are down there doing donuts, celebrating with them. It's a very cool sight. With everybody pretty much done, I guess we can get into our final running order, our complete final running order. And then, of course, we'll try to have a word with our top 3 finishers. But as per usual, I'll take 1 through 10. I'll hand the rest off to you. Of course, it is the WWR driver, Tyler Seville, in that number 11. After an hour and 16 minutes, 23 seconds, he is going to walk away the winner, right ahead of second place Johnny Avila. Michael Krobach, the final driver on the podium with an impressive late race lunge to get himself up towards the front. Will Worsler led the majority of this race. He had the strategy devised in his mind, and he had the driving to back it up, but a late race caution put him back in 4th. Drew Carroll winding up 5th. Greg Evans with a good run, but unfortunately not the run he was looking for. He's going to finish 6th. Pete Baskins unfortunately caught up in an incident, I believe, a little bit prior to the end. He got shuffled back, and he finished 7th after having a really great run at the beginning stint. Richard Fletcher is going to finish 8th in the number 43. Good day for the driver in number 43. Troy Haight, who had internet issues there in the practice session, well, his internet held out all night long tonight, and he's going to drive away in the top 10 there in 9th. Rounding out the top 10, Corey Benton in that number 37. He's going to round them out, and you got it from 11th on back.
AJ Digby, after a strong run, finishes 11th. Craig Stykes, haven't seen him much this season. Good to see him back. He finishes 12th. Woody Mahan, saw him with a great run early on, and unfortunately getting caught up in a late race incident, finishes 13th. Kevin Stone finishes 14th. Michael Larch, after his strong run tonight, finishes 15th, still in the lead lap. Todd Kirkwood 17th. Todd Kirkwood 16th. Tim Knott 17th. Adam Jersky 18th. Grant Brown 19th. And Brian Yazik will round out top 20.
And to round out the rest of your field, you've got Thomas George, 61 laps down. This is where we get into the depressing zone. The drivers who all seem to be doing pretty well, but got caught up early. Thomas George in the number 88, bringing it home at 21st. Behind him, you've got Jeff Ward, 22nd. Alan Young involved very early. He's 93 laps down there in 23rd. He was in the same accident as Jackson Van Volkenberg and John Eckert, who were involved in the same accident, respectively 24, 25. And the last place driver, 94 laps down, a heartbreaking finish for the driver of the number 70, Scott Eckrich.
Heartbreaking it was, and you hate to see someone that has been so dominant the last few weeks, like Scott Eckrich, come into a race, lap 6, not able to put on the show. It makes you wonder what could have happened had that early wreck not happened. There's some big names at the bottom of that list that definitely could have been factors in this race.
I mean, this is the first race for this league that I can recall commentating where the number 70 wasn't a factor for the majority of it. I mean, he's just one of those drivers that he's always up front. He's always qualifying well. And if you're broadcasting the race that he's in, you can't avoid talking about him. I mean, it was strange almost not talking about that 70 car, not seeing him out there. That early incident was a very rare occurrence for him. And of course, he was just kind of a bystander. There was nothing he could do. So just heart-wrenching to see that happen. But luckily, he has kind of an advantage that I think a lot of these other drivers didn't have, and that's, he's won a lot of races. He's got a lot of points built up. He kind of had a cushion where, of course, you don't want to finish last. You don't want to lose out on any points, but he had a cushion. He could afford to have that run as long as he gets back up on it next week and gets back to being, the number 70 car that we're used to. So disappointing, but definitely not the end of the world.
No, not the end of the world at all, and I think it's going to light a fire under the 70 car to come out and win next week and get an even stronger run to the chase. So out this week, but definitely not out of the season, and definitely a fire under the 70 car.
I absolutely agree. All right, it is time for some post-race interviews. We have Michael Krobach, our third place finisher, in the waiting room. We're going to go ahead and bring him up. Michael Krobach, you got a copy?
Hey, Andre, how are you?
I'm doing good. You had a phenomenal run tonight, Michael. I'll tell you what. I said on that last restart, seeing where you were restarting a little bit further back in that lead pack, I said, if anything happens, Krobach, he's in the catbird seat. He can capitalize on it, and that's exactly what you did. You got yourself up into the podium, got yourself a nice point day. Walk me through the end of that race.
Yeah, the whole race was just a lot of fun. Like, we put in 200 miles of practice there with Scott, and it sucks that he got taken out. But I feel like we got behind on the 8-ball just a little bit at the start, and that kind of affected our position towards the end there. We saved a set of tires, and I thought there'd be more cautions than there were tonight, but a lot of guys got taken out in that first one. So we just lost track position there, and we were never really on even tires with the Will Worsler team. And once we were, I felt like we had something to run with them. And restarting back there on 6th, wanted to help Woody, get a top 5 if I could. And then he got wrecked, and I got behind Drew there. And when he got beside Will, they kind of stalled out, and I thought about pushing him for a split second, but I said, nah, you know what? I want on the podium. We put in a lot of practice. We want to represent clipping that apex. And we just sent it on the bottom 3 wide there and 3 on the last lap, and it stuck, and we're sitting here on the podium.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned you thought you got a little bit behind the 8-ball and you lost some track position. I got to ask you, how hard was it to pass out there tonight with this aero package? What was it like trying to carve your way up through the field, and how did you do it?
I felt the number 72 team had a lot of long run speed, and that run there before we got the caution with 10 to go, I felt like we were the fastest car on the track. Once we, we were still behind on tires. We were still like 3 laps behind on tires, but I felt like they kind of equalized, and we were digging at the end there. But once you got within a car length or 2 of the car in front, you kind of stalled out, and you really needed help from behind. And I tried to make the bottom work and try to get on the quarter panel and side draft the guys on top. But that freight train would always just pick right back up when you have 5 or 6 Bill Worsler and Synergy Esports cars working together. I couldn't make anything happen on the bottom, so I was trying to get the top rolling, and I think maybe we could have gotten up to P3 or so if the race stayed green. But I think if we took tires on lap 7, I think maybe we could have gotten victory lane tonight.
Absolutely. It was a phenomenal run. And like you said, it was kind of against the odds. You had so many teams around you that their teammates were working with them, giving them that drafting advantage that you maybe necessarily didn't have. And yet still you fought through it and you got a podium. Is there anybody you'd like to shout out or thank for that podium finish?
Yeah, I got to thank Drew and Woody. We were drafting well together there. We were like 7 seconds behind before that green flag pit stop round, and we made up all that time, short pitting and then working out back together. So I got to give a shout out to those guys. They were with me all night. Have to thank Sim Racing Merch. They just announced this morning that they're shutting their doors. They've been a long-time supporter of the 72 team. I've been wearing the world's okayest sim racer shirt today from them, and I guess we were okay enough to get a podium. So I hate that they're shutting down, but they've been a good partner. Clipping that Apex, HPP Simulation, Thumbs Up Cancer Down, Midwest Simulations, Spotlights, Host Venom, Ready to Frag, Fleximation Systems, Sim Racing Apps, CJ Automotive, Amsoil by Adam Blattle, Splash and Go Graphics, and the Mahan Speed Laboratory. All these guys are awesome partners, and I got a shout out to the Joy of Driving, always hanging out in chat and supporting us.
All right. Well, congratulations on the podium finish, and we thank you for your time, Michael.
Thanks, Andre. Have a good night.
That was third place finisher out of the booth. Very excited about that run. Some drivers, they look at, a race where they could have won and they think, man, I could have won that. That's really frustrating. But I like that positive outlook. He's like, yeah, we could have won, but it was a great night. We could have been involved in the wreck. We could have been further back. We got behind the ball, and I'm just happy to finish where we finished. It's always nice to have drivers with a positive outlook, and he seems to be pretty excited about that. Hopefully, he can carry that momentum forward. But now it is time to talk with our second place finisher, Johnny Avila. He's with Jordan Harnish down in the pits.
Oh, shoot. He actually blew a tire.
Johnny Avila, second place finish again for you, my friend. Walk us through the closing laps of that event.
When we were on that long green run, it kind of seemed like we were in good position, running 1, 2, 3, 4. This track, you kind of got to race it like a plate track, I guess. Like the Legends cars at Daytona, how you have to lift a little bit, but the draft is. And then right there at the end, it was just get a good restart and flat out.
Flat out it was. Now, we heard you mention you thought someone popped a tire who wouldn't happen to be talking about the 84 Woody Mahan after your slight contact on the backstretch, would you?
No, one person stayed out on the first green flag. On the first yellow, and then that person ended up blowing a tire. I forgot their name. I was talking to Michael and Tyler.
Yeah, we cut in at the most inopportune time sometimes. No big deal. You got anyone you want to thank tonight?
Well, I'd like to thank everybody that puts this together. Also, the sponsors I got on my car. I got Willoughby, Lakeside Automotive. And all in all, this night, it really showed that good teamwork can really propel a team forward, because we were running up front pretty much the whole night.
Does that mean you dropped a hint that you've secretly joined World Warsaw Racing now?
We're like Synergy Racing's like an associate team, so it's me and Craig, and then we're just in association with the WWR guys.
That makes more sense now. Congratulations on your second place finish, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
That was second place finisher Johnny Avila. Now it is time to have a word with our race winner to conclude our post-race coverage.
Got me, because
great night for Will Worthler Racing. And again, you got to shout out Richard Fletcher just like he did. A great run out of that number 43. I think sometimes a driver has a day where, they don't go out there and they don't set the world on fire, but they find out, hey, I can do this. I ran top 10. I was there with them. And that little bit of confidence, that makes all the difference in the world. So I am curious to see what Mr. Fletcher can do going forward. But before we end our post-race coverage there, Jordan, do you have any last thoughts about the race?
It was definitely great to see what exactly I thought we were going to see. 3-4 wide racing, differing strategies, even though they had us fooled there for a little while. Wondering what was going to happen next. On the edge of their seat the entire time. And cautions flew at times when I didn't really think they were going to, but they definitely shook things up. And coming out of it with my pick from last week, so apparently I just need to pick a week ahead, and I get that one correct now. To see Tyler Seville take the win, kind of a surprise, but it's a track like Michigan. It's what you want to see.
Absolutely, and real quick for the fans at home, and also me, because I'm saying it's for the fans. I'm saying it for me because I don't know. Where are we headed to next week? What are the fans going to look forward to going into next week?
That's a really good question. Hang on one second. Let me tell you.
Looks like nobody knows. It's a mystery. We could be going to Circuit of the Americas again. I guess I shouldn't have put you on the spot like that. I assumed you knew more than I do, because most people know more than I do in general. So, but we'll figure it out. We'll race where we race, and we'll see what happens. Anyways, that's going to do it for our post-race coverage. We hope you enjoyed all of the action from Michigan International. It was quite an action-packed race. I don't think there was really a lull in the action pretty much the entire time. So for 3Wide TV, I'm Andre Grandbush, joined alongside Jordan Harnish, and of course, producer Carlos Acosta, the man that makes it all happen. And we will catch you next week.